Welcome to Power Boat Talk, the podcast where we talk everything performance boats with your host, Joe Rode.
Welcome to Power Boat Talk. This episode is brought to you by Freedom and Fuel clothing brand, made for people who love big horsepower, fuel-burning engines. It doesn't matter if you're into hot rods, off-road, side-by-sides, or of course, fast boats. Freedom and Fuel has the gear to match your passion for power and performance. You can find Freedom and Fuel clothing at all ADBA and NJBA drag boat races at the SoCal Jet Boats trailer or online at freedomandfuel.com. Hello and welcome to Power Boat Talk. Today I have with me Mr. Chris Davidson, who is a longtime publisher in the performance boat industry. He's currently the publisher of Speedboat Magazine. And we wanted to catch up with Chris and hear about the long history of publishing. And of course, Hot Boat Magazine is really kind of where it all started. And so looking forward to talking, Chris. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So I'll start with a little bit of current. And I don't know how current this is. And I haven't caught up with you about this later, but you're renowned for being a huge Elvis fan. And I know at one point do you still have a lot of collectibles? You still doing the Elvis thing, or?
So it's diversified. So I still hold Elvis, but Prince, Janet Jackson, a little Marilyn Monroe. She's not nearly, she's collectible, but very expensive. So, but I go where there's interest.
Yeah, cool. Now, how did you get into that? Just like I don't know, something that's from youth, or?
So it goes back to youth. I talked my parents into taking me to go see him in 1975, August. And he only did 3 shows and then canceled that engagement, which is really irrelevant to me. But I actually caught him the 3rd night. And had I gone the 4th or 5th, I would have missed him.
Oh, nice. How many? So that's pretty cool. Not many people get to say that they saw him. How many times did you see him after that?
So I saw him twice, August of 75 here in Vegas, and the following year in Long Beach, California, April of 76.
Nice. And did you watch the movie that came out a couple years ago?
Yeah. So I thought it was, some of the storyline was off, but I think if you're a hardcore fan, nobody's ever really appeased. I think it's really made for the masses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would imagine. I'm not super familiar with it, but I figured it was probably embellished a little bit, knowing that director,
Right.
the history part of it. But I will tell you, the music part of it, that kid, like young Elvis, that was just from the music aspect, it was pretty cool.
No question. So I would agree, especially from the music creative and perspective, just short of a 10. But but there were some storylines in there that, if you're a fan, a hardcore fan, you know what they're talking about.
Yeah, very cool. So from Elvis to boats, I mean, although I was looking up a little bit of history, I had no idea that your dad, I know your dad was involved in the magazine at some point with you, but I had no idea. I guess he actually owned a marina, right? Sundown Marine.
Yeah. So I started hanging around the boats in the early 70s. Sundown was in Huntington Beach on Beach Boulevard, and then moved to a better location about 73 probably. So he had it from he started with Bill and Gracie Holmes at Horizon Boats, and then opened Sundown, and it became what it became, and he ran that until 78, 9, somewhere in there.
I think Sundown was, who was the guy? Was it Bob Long, K-boat guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was always kind of known as that, that was the place of that boat and that guy's stuff. So.
Yeah. So he and my dad had some issues. that I think caused the partnership to dissolve. But for another day.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't realize too. It looks like they actually like franchised it or opened multiple stores.
Yeah, I think Kentucky, San Diego, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe one other place. But it was pretty tough to beat Beach Boulevard in Huntington
Yeah,
Beach in the mid '70s.
yeah. But no, that was cool. I had no idea that it was that size. I always remember it just from going down there. I guess probably just going down there. And you would just see it when you went down there. But and then knowing about the K boat, so
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Yeah, I had no idea that you had that kind of history. So
yeah. Literally, my brother and I would, have dirt fights, and while the boats were, because at one time we ran, I think, 3 or 4 boats. We had
wow,
the K boat, an SK boat, and they had the Hobbit, Bad Jose. Um, yeah, there were 3 or 4. Bob would jump from boat to boat
yeah,
depending on
yeah,
which race.
wow, very cool. And then at some point you met, I guess what was
Chuck
his name?
Pierce.
Chuck Pierce, the infamous Chuck Pierce.
Yeah. So I started work for him in late '85 for 2 days a week for $50 a day.
Oh, what a deal!
Yeah.
And what was it called? It was called Custom, like Custom Engine, I think.
So he had just changed it from custom boat and engine
Custom Boat
to
and
hot
Engine.
boat.
Okay. Okay.
So when I started with him, January '86 was just coming out.
Yeah. And I guess, well, yeah. So 86. So Powerboat was still around. So that was kind of
Oh, yeah.
probably your competition. And then I would imagine, I don't know if Trailer Boat was around then.
So yeah, Wiley was running trailer boat, and he was around, and Bob was the front piece for powerboat, and hot boat tried to make its way in the market as well.
Yeah. You guys always had like a little bit, kind of more the West Coast, kind of more racier, I think, a little bit less offshore. Is that kind of the way when I was in the industry buying advertising from you? It was like,
So I would say yes, and that you know everybody's looking for their niche in the
mhm,
market, and that in because we moved in late October or November of '86 from Lake Havasu, from I want to get this straight. Yeah, from Lake Havasu to Corona, which is really prior to Warlock and all of the
mm,
guys, the manufacturers showing up in Corona in the '90s.
mhm.
So although it was an empty building, I had to put on a different pair of pants and actually help build some of the walls of the offices and stuff. So always interesting at Hoppo.
Yeah, it sounds like the early days. I saw something about you guys, you and Kevin Space, paying your own way to boat shows and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah. So I think in retrospect, those are certainly the much more creative and interesting and really even funner. Is that a word, funner? More fun, funner.
Everybody knows what it
Um,
means.
yeah. Um, but when really when Larry Flynt came to buy us out is when things changed.
Yeah.
Because we went from a distant number 3 or 4 magazine to, from most people's perspective, the number 1 magazine.
Yeah. Now, when you said you were wearing a lot of pants and hats back then, so when you went to work for him, what? I didn't ask you what capacity was it? Were you writing? Were you selling? Were you?
So I thought I could write, even though Kevin set me straight on that really quick. But I worked the camera. I made halftones and worked the typesetting machine and printed out paper and whatever was needed for the day because we had a drag paper at the time called National Drag Boat.
Oh, I didn't know
So
you. I didn't know you owned. So he owned that too. Check. Oh,
yeah,
okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, he was in the crash from Lake Havasu to Corona in late '86, and he was gone for 3 to 4 months. And we pushed out what we could, which was the 4 copies of National Drag Boat, and I think we got 1 magazine out, but he bitched and was mad that we hadn't pumped out 3 or 4 magazines, as well. But yeah, he was a tough old dude.
Yeah. Well, tough business, and you got to be pretty tough to dive into that and make a living with boat guys and kind of grassroots stuff at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Kevin Space, so he was with you at that. I mean, he was there before you got there.
I would say yes.
Man.
That's vague to me, I suppose, but of course it was almost 40 years ago. But
yeah,
he might have been. So I actually met Kevin and detailed his car, because before Hot Boat, I had Chris's auto and marine kit.
Oh, sweet.
So so I detailed his car.
Yeah.
Delivered it at about 5:30, 5:45, which is perfect twilight time in Lake Havasu, and that was the best time to to take the car or boat or whatever I'd done for the day to the customer.
Yeah. So I missed a part too, though. So were you doing the detail? Did you move to Havasu to do the detailing stuff? Is that what you were doing?
So my mom and dad moved there in January of '84.
Oh, okay. You're already there.
And so I had the detail shop for 2 or 3 years, and then switched to Hot Boat.
Gotcha. So then, so how's the Larry Flynt, like, just knocks on your door one day, or Chuck says Larry's buying the place, or that had to be crazy?
So Tom and Jim came to the offices in Corona, and both are, square good guys. Larry was a whole nother animal. He had a gold wheelchair and he rolled around, and he only really came to see me one time, and we're in 2 different buildings on Wilshire. So Larry was in the 9171 building, and we were in the 9100 building. But I've got my foot on the desk, punching numbers, and I'm holding the phone and typing. I couldn't look any busier, and he just sat there and stared at me for probably a good 4 or 5 minutes. And Jim, which was the president of the company, he leaned down and said something to him, and so I ended up saying, "What did he say? What did he say?" And he said he wanted to know how much money you made. I said, "Okay, what'd you tell him?" But in retrospect, those were certainly the funner, more interesting days of doing it all.
So you moved. So when they bought it, you moved from Corona to Wilshire down LA.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right there's culture shock, right?
Yeah. I had a truck. This is a separate story, but so I'd done a California stop and got into a tiff with 2 Beverly Hills cops, and the officer and I got into a beef, and so I said, "I want to speak to your lieutenant or your sergeant." And so he said, "Okay." So long and short is, he made me wait for almost an hour before the guy showed up. But when I got home and talked to my dad, I said, "What should I do?" And he said, "Sell the truck." And I said, "Okay."
They know who you are now.
Well, so that really started me on a whole new, I'm probably on my 3rd or 4th Mercedes, maybe 5th. I'm not even sure, but it started me on a long relationship with Mercedes-Benz, because I love the car. It fit in Beverly Hills, and just a great car.
Gotcha. So now, but now you're in business and now you got resources. Like, how did that start off? Like, did you just say, hey, how, do I spend what I want? Like, or you just started pitching them stuff? How'd that go?
So, the Elvis Museum I had I opened it in 99, and I sold it in 2006. And it was about that time. The sale caused some jealousy and grief with a lot of different people. And so that changed some perspectives on the magazine and how it was run. So the only one that had no problem with it, that was fine with the whole thing, was my boss, Jim Coles. Because I told him and mentioned, and I made sure the numbers were, the expenditures were in order, and, every revenues were correct. So, and Hot Boat went through a really a big growth pattern through the early to mid 90s.
Well, then was it like 92 when Nordsgog died? I think like in 92. So they probably started falling. I think they were bought and sold, and they probably were falling off a little bit. Plus, I think they were going big offshore kind of only type stuff.
So Bob Brown was the hook for me at the time. So I went and chased him as soon as all the information, became aware. And so Bob came on board with us, and that, many years later, Bob Teague did the same.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Those are nice catches.
Yeah.
So, I guess back to the when Flynt bought you, though. I mean, you said you like now you got some more resources, and you get to be, I guess you don't have to worry about paying your own way to boat shows. But I'm just curious, like how that passed. Like now you've got some funding, and what was the direction? Like, what was the stuff that you always wanted to do, but you couldn't do until you got that?
It was not immediate, because we just didn't know what to expect. We went into Jim's old company, which was I think called Stewart Communications, which was on a different floor, and Kevin and I were scared to death to end up on the third floor. It was bulletproof. There'd been threats of bombings, and there was just all kinds of stuff that Larry liked getting in the middle of, and so we wanted nothing to do with that. But it was crazy for, I would say, the first year and a half. But the positive is that where one day I'd be running the typesetting machine, and the next day the camera, and making halftones, they had multiple people to do that for us. So I went from doing one magazine to, I think at one time I had 3 or 4 magazines along with one shots.
Oh,
I did an Elvis magazine.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. There's a funny story. I'll tell it now. So like I said, my boss and I were really good friends, but he said, Elvis has been gone 30 years or whatever. He said, I don't see the interest. And I said, well, okay. And let me think about it. So I went down and talked to the guy that was in charge of getting the orders and the distribution, and was fortunate to talk him into getting me the number that I needed, and it all worked out. So I can remember Jim calling him in his office and saying, Gus, come down and see me. And so Gus came down, and it was a decent walk, because it was a big building. And he said, you told Davidson that you could get 200,000 copies ordered for the Elvis issue? And he said, yeah. He said, okay,
Wow.
you have both got approval. He said, but I want to see it before it goes to bed. I said, okay. But in that is how I launched, all the Elvis ends, because I had an ad for, I had 2 or 3 ads in there for 2 or 3 different companies. Memories on the Wall. There was 2 or 3 companies that, all were disguised to hopefully sell and create awareness.
Oh, that's awesome. You have to send me a picture of that Elvis book. I've never seen that.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the infamous time comes along where the whole there was an issue, and I don't know what happened or how it happened, but at some point the hot boat got sold out from underneath you, and I don't know if you want to talk about that, but kind of a crazy story.
So I'll cover it. My brother had just gotten married and had done some things that I had asked him not to do. He was at the time living here in Vegas with me in a separate house, but the Vegas style was just not for him, and so he moved back to Havasu. But um, there were some misnomers and some things that occurred with my credit card and things that just I was pissed about. So I was actually negotiating to buy Hot Boat from Larry Flynt, and in the interim, my brother put a deal together, but his was more on a song and a prayer, and mine was based on a lot of money that I'd gotten from the Elvis Museum sale.
How was he? Like, it always seems. I mean, and it was a weird time in the industry because you were the staple in being in the performance industry. You were the staple in the industry. We knew you and the whole crew, which we'll talk about later. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of went 2 ways, and it was a kind of a weird time. But how did he pull? That just seems weird. Like, you're the guy at the top with making things happen for years, and then I don't know. It's like he got the phone number of somebody that knew, that could do it, but didn't know what else was going on.
So the key players were Kevin, myself, and Brett Bain, the editor. And along with that, Jim Wilkes and Greg Shoemaker and some of the other test teams. So Darren, he never stood a chance. I mean, he just never stood a chance. I mean, he did a good job, for the initial, hey, here I am, because he got a big, huge 18-wheeler and had a big hot boat banner put on it. That was a rough show for I suppose both of us. But yeah, it caused bad blood on both sides. I suppose his was over a longer period of time, and mine was on just that short period of time. But so there were manufacturers. The most interesting one was probably, well, there were 2. The Levy Craft boys were really mad at me, and then they ended up with some of their own issues a couple years later. And the Sanchez brothers at Essex also had issues and ended up dealing with some of the same things. But when, I guess it was COVID hit, I met up with him and said, let's let it go, even though I didn't let all of it go. But I talked with him last week, and that I know of, I totally let it go. And I think we both recognize our screw ups and, where we could have done things better. And yeah. So.
Well, that's good for you. You did the right thing there, but it's just too bad how, I don't know, like, all the turmoil that he caused, if he would have sat down with you and just worked some things out, like together, you guys would have been so much stronger. Neither one of you would have had hot boat this whole time.
Right.
You would have not lost all that momentum, which it was a lot of momentum, but
no question.
So it's just too bad how people get that short-sighted,
Yeah, and like I said, it happened with both Jeff and Chris Kmeyer and with Ron and Steve Sanchez. And all four of them were, I won't say against me, but certainly weren't pro Chris after the split. And I said, look, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm just going to still do the hot boat way. And you guys can come on board when you want to, and if you don't ever, then that's what it'll be. But Darren really missed in my impression. He missed the meat of Brett, Kevin, Wilkes, Shoemaker. Having 30 of the 40 team members that showed up once a year for the boat tests were not the best assets to acquire. And I was spending $5 million, not $50,000.
Right. But I think he probably underestimated too, because I don't remember a ton of it because it was a long time ago. But I do remember that when all that happened, like, we got phone calls from everybody, and we immediately heard from Shoemaker, hey, Chris is going to come from, this is what really happened, and Chris is going to come out of this. And so, yeah, you had that horsepower too, like a lot of industry guys that were saying, hey, we know what really happened, and this was a bum deal, and Chris is going to come out of it, so.
Yeah. So I would, that is, I'd have to say, my biggest regret was that I couldn't rectify it before, that all went down. After, I won't say it was easy, but I have a clear path of what I have to do from A to get to Z.
And then your reaction then initially was, and I don't remember, it seemed like it happened very quickly, as you launched Performance Boats, right?
Yeah. So I spent that summer, I bought a couple different domain names, had the initial thought to go multimedia. Performance Boats was badass. We had some really killer things that we did with that, with Craig Lathrop's help. And ultimately I sold that to a company out of Canada. So luckily, like I said, I had bought a couple different domain names. So Performance Boats was first. Then when that sold, I started with Speedboat. And that was, now it looks really easy to say, well, how obvious. That's, of course, the choice that you should have done. But I can't tell you, because we were involved at the time with Forrest Lucas and Mav TV, and had made a TV show. And we made 2 episodes. It was called The King of Props, I think.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
I don't remember that.
And to me, it was a funny show. But a lot of it, I suppose, is you got to be on the inside to know what everybody's talking about and whatever. But the big decision to kill, the reason is as a domain name, I got performanceboatsmag.com, had sold Performance Boats to the Canadian company, but they were killing us, on the internet, because Performance Boats is way better than performanceboatsmag.com. So for me, it was apparent to myself that we were going to have to go to Speedboat. There was a lull at that time, which would have been '06 or '07, and the whole industry was in a recouping mode. So, I said we could start, in my opinion, with Speedboat, and we'd be able to get away with developing some horsepower while everybody was reorganizing and, doing their, best to save their company.
Mm-hmm.
Where, my guys were like, "You idiot! You changed the name from Performance Boats to, because the Canadian company was only interested in the subdomain. They weren't interested in the magazine. So the physical magazine I could have, continued with for quite some time. But in my opinion, the long-term destination was the web and all of that, not the print.
Yeah. And when all that happened, I mean, you were kind of the point where you were at that point, you were kind of like it is now, where you're kind of the only game in town too, as far as performance boat. So I think you kind of, you probably lost a little bit of momentum, but you kind of could have done anything you wanted really, because it was it was a good magazine, and you were kind of the only, if I remember correctly, you were kind of the only game in town at that point from a performance standpoint.
Yeah. So Casey, I think he had Performance Boats is what it was called. So he called me. He was in Vegas the day we launched Performance Boats, which had quite a, we spent 3 to 4 months being well organized to launch that site. And, I can remember saying to him, are you calling to congratulate me? And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, you haven't checked the internet then lately. So you should check the internet and call me tomorrow. And so he never called me back because, Performance Boats was Performance Boats. And it was a really good, at the time, organization, because we just had so much energy and so many different guys working to, build it. So, I mean, Powerboat had its share of the market, and all of us, did different things. I suppose better than the other one, but nobody had Performance Boats launch the day he called me to I don't even know what he called me for. It's been so long, I mean, the real, I suppose that even now is finally, I'd say in the last 6 months or year, Darren and I have at least patched it up for the most.
Oh, really? Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good to hear. Yeah, that's good to hear. Wow. I can't even imagine that kind of turmoil. And it's hard to believe that as a family, brothers, like he could have been that upset about whatever and spun it into whatever he spun it into, that it was such an injustice that he had to do that, because obviously there was something there where he thought it was irreparable and he had to do that, which just seems crazy.
Yeah. I will bear the guilt of, or the burden. I'm the one that was like, how dare you? I hired you as a favor to my parents. The organization is ours in that, all the different guys that are on the team, the magazine and whatever. And his was over, I mean, it's over his wife that he's had now for, it's got to be close to 20 years, but 15 years for sure. And so bad timing, I suppose, on all of our part, but certainly for me, I held a deep grudge when Larry Flynt and company, because I was in Memphis for an Elvis event when the Larry Flynt people came to take back their possessions. But I'd already made adjustments for several weeks, probably going into months of preparation of what I wanted to deal with and what I wasn't going to deal with. And, like my computer, I paid for 50% of it. So, Larry could, I guess, take his 50% if he could figure out a way to do that. But I owned it because, the rent, I paid the bill. Now, I expensed it to Larry, but the lease was in my name. So my landlord, he called and said, look, unless you don't have the key and you're no longer Chris Davidson, there's nobody getting in that building. So he said, don't sweat it.
Yeah. Crazy. And
so, that was 2006. So it's been, 15 years.
Yeah. Wow. But that had to be, obviously, once you get over the initial shock, then like you said, you get your team together, and then, well, I guess back to your team. And when this happened, was everybody kind of on board? Kind of your Kevin
Kevin wanted to finish the issue with Hot Boat, and I understood. So I was fine with that. But Wilkes and Shoemaker and Brett and we all hunkered down and said, okay, this is it. But we had, the museum sold for several $1 million. So, I was prepared for a battle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was nice. But you had your team, you've had those guys. You can talk about all those guys. You kind of still have them, right? I know Shoemaker, right?
Yeah. So Wilkes, fell off. He quit talking to me about 2 years ago. So I don't know if it was a series of missed phone calls or there was something. So I called him every Thanksgiving and every Christmas. And I guess it was 2 years ago. He didn't return my call, and I reached out to him a couple times, and so I don't really know what happened because I talked to Greg about that at the last boat tests, because he and I roomed together, and yeah, so for the first couple hours until he nods off at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, whatever time it is, and but I get him for an hour or two before he's gone.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad though, but that's cool. You had those guys, and then Brett, God, Brett's been there forever now too. He just keeps plugging away.
Yeah. Brett's been with me for 30 years, give or take.
Yeah. And then Ray, when did Ray came on, what, 8-10 years ago? Or
I'd say 10 years ago, give or take.
That had to be a nice breath of fresh air. And obviously Ray's a crazy man as far as traveling. And
so he is. He and Tom and Carter, they hit, I would say on average 3 to 4 a month. But there are some months where on a certain weekend, they're in New Jersey on Friday and they're in Florida on Saturday or whatever, so they'll do multiple events over a multiple day weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I talk to Ray every once in a while. It's just, I always have to check with him. So are you in town? Because I know he's just, it's crazy.
Right.
So, and I'm sure that's not something you want to be doing these days.
Yeah. So for me, it's, going on almost, I say it's been 40 years. I guess it hasn't, but it's close to 40. It's 38 or whatever the number is. But, you do, so I have a couple friends, but you lose the passion. And the other thing is, your friends, they retire or pass or, whatever. And none of that is any fun for me.
Right. And you do, I mean, and I know you were the guy for years. I mean, we'd do you would do the hot boat trials would be the thing every year. And
Right.
as you know, I was always with parts manufacturers. So we would come, you would invite us all, we get to watch
Yeah.
that. And then we all got the meeting in Chris's trailer where Chris decided how much money you were going to spend for the next year and how many ads you were going to buy. And, you know, I went into publishing my later life, and so I could appreciate all that. Like it was,
Right.
you were good, man. You were a machine, and you always delivered for us too, you know? So you always did what you
Thanks.
said you were going to do. And
that stemmed from Pierce because that actually, she and I worked the last 3 or 4 days here in Summerlin. She collects and sells antiques, but I was a much better salesman for advertising for the magazines than I ever was for selling antiques because, you know, I just don't have the she told me, you know, I'm a lousy salesman, you know, and I said, yeah, I guess I am because, you know, 40 years later and a little fatter, although that's actually the opposite because in those days I was 310, I got up to 320, but I'm 240 now.
oh, are you really? I can't
Yeah.
believe that. Because
Yeah.
you were just a big guy. I don't remember you like being like way overweight. You were just a big guy.
Yeah. So it stems from I have acid reflux, and I've had to be cardio converted 3 times now. First time was '08, second time was 16, and the third time was 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yeah, so that comes from eating stuff that your body doesn't really want to process, you know. So basically, I quit eating about 2 o'clock. You know, so no lemonade, no spaghetti, pizza. There's a list of things that I could bore you with, but you remember the ones that, you know, when you get that, it's like lava, and you know you wake up in the middle of the night with lava in your throat. You know, you're looking to change. Whatever I want for dinner, I'll have for lunch tomorrow.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that, and you know, I was gonna say, there's been a lot of hard times out here on the West Coast for the boating industry. A lot of ups and downs, gas crises and stuff. So you've been through and you weathered a lot of those storms. Was the hot boat thing the hardest part? The hot boat sail the hardest part, or were there other times when you think were more difficult?
So hot boat working for Chuck, I literally was just turned, I think, 21, and I ended up buying a boat from him to loan him money to pay the print bill, and that's how I started. Literally, I hadn't worked for him for 3 or 4 weeks, and that's going on. So Chuck was certainly, you know, he was certainly a hard driver, but he didn't have the moral compass or the ethical compass that Jim had at Larry Flynt. So definitely a transition. You know, so I think I'd like to think that I learned how to sell and whatever with Chuck, and then learned to reserve and work that for to Jim's benefit and Larry Flynt's benefit all through the 90s and 2000s.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, as tough as it was, especially for a young guy, when you go into a situation like that where, you know, working for a small company, the ones with the lack of resources is probably the most difficult thing, right? So you kind of had the worst case, best case, because I mean that's how you cut your chops when you're trying to figure out how to do it with no money, no, you know, a lot of resistance, and it probably at some point you're like, this guy's older than me, but I swear I know more than I know this is not the right way to do it, you know? So
yeah, I mean, luckily for both Chuck and myself, even though he was getting towards the end of his career, the lessons were, whatever Chuck would do, I'd need to do the opposite. Chuck was famous for, running on unauthorized ads like that.
Oh, no way.
I would say 60 to 90% of the book was, oh no, you told me you'd take the ad or whatever. And Bob Leach was famous in the late 80s, early 90s. When he'd hear I was there, he'd run the opposite way, and he'd be scrambling and telling the guys, I'm not here. And, I just told him, I guarantee you that we will make it and I will return what I said. And you're going to have to bear the burden with me of time. And luckily, Bob is he's a great salesman himself from Michigan and the cereal companies, but he was always good to me.
Yeah, well, that brings up another thing, man. All the characters through the years out here. So, and I got to tell you, I sold advertising for Powerboat for 2 years, and it was the only time when I was selling. I don't know how you do it, man. Chasing boat guys for ad dollars. Nobody would sign a contract. Nobody. It was crazy.
Right. So I do remember now that you mentioned it, although I had forgotten that. But yeah, I do remember that you worked. That was late 90s, early
2000, I believe.
2000.
Like around 2000. Yeah. So I don't know how you did that, but who was? So you mentioned Bob. Obviously, Bob. Bob's Bob, and he's done a great job. Eliminator's still around. Pretty amazing company. Who were some of your other favorites?
So, some were favorites as personal friends, but not as clients, and vice versa. Some as client, excuse me. Eddie was a great friend of mine. I only hooked up with him really once a year, maybe twice a year. But he and I had some great conversations, and I actually probably it's been got to be 3 or 4 years ago now, I think.
When he passed away?
Yeah.
I believe so. 21, 22. I think 21. I think.
But that is probably in 40 years the absolute most devastating situation that has occurred to me at Hot Boat.
Oh, it's too bad. Yeah, he really liked you, and I don't know, dude. I don't know that you ever got. I don't know if maybe Kevin got the wrath of Ed once in a while. I don't know, but I don't remember that.
So Eddie had his way. He wouldn't. So I'm going to tell you another story. So this was early on. Flynt has just bought us, and I had a guy working for me named Flynt Burkhart, who was a good salesman, and he had signed Eddie, and I had Rex as a client.
Oh,
and I said, okay, but I'm going to do a story on Rex before I'm going to do the Eddie story, and Flynt was disagreed with that story, and so I got a call from Eddie, and he said everything and threatened to kick my ass, and I said, okay. I said, you better be a big bad dude, because I'm coming to the LA Boat Show, and you're going to be the first guy I look for, and you'd better be ready. And Eddie was game on. He was like, you got it.
Yeah.
So I went there and found him, and he just was like, who are you? And I told him, and he asked again, who are you? And I said, it is me. So get it on. But that was probably I'm going to say early 90s, but ironically, even though he and I only hung out once or twice a year, uh, uh, just great conversation,
Mm-hmm.
both financially with the companies and,
Mm-hmm.
but also, don't salt your food and don't just all the things that two friends would talk about.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, he was good that way. You just didn't want to get on his bad side. And the good thing is, if you got on his bad side, you knew it, and then it was usually over.
Yeah. So I'm sure over the years I took a couple tongue lashings from him, but um, the earliest one was the funniest one.
That's funny. I've never heard that one. I don't know. I might bore people with this one, but he tells me kind of a similar story about Jerry Van Beek.
Yeah.
When Jerry Van Beek who's infamous for, which you probably know plenty of Jerry Van Beek stories, right?
Yeah.
Ended up, he owned a little boat shop, started selling Bonners, got in the middle of Bonners. I think he ended up owning Bonner, which became ultra boats after that. And anyhow, but one time Jerry got mad at him about something, and Ed told him, Jerry, I've just had it with you. And Jerry says, you know what, I'm going to come down there, Ed. I'm going to kick your ass. And Ed's like, and I don't know if you remember Ed, but his infamous Costco trips. He said, Jerry, I'm going to Costco and I'll be back in an hour and you better be here. and Jerry says, I will. And they get off the phone and they MF each other, get off the phone. Ed goes to Costco, comes back, gets on the phone. Jerry, he's like, what? He's like, I'm back from Costco. Where are you? Jerry's like, F you, Eddie, and he hangs up.
Right.
And then at the LA boat show the next year, he said Jerry came walking by Eddie had his booth, and Jerry and his family came walking by, and he sees Jerry, and he looks at him, and he tells his family, goes, that's Eddie, he hates me.
Yeah. So as a 25 to 30-year-old guy, with some attitude and trying to prove, who we were and trying to become, is different than a 50 or now 60-year-old guy. So it's totally different.
Sure.
But yeah. So Eddie is definitely hit me hard, and I left the boat show. That happened at Desert Storm, and I couldn't stay there, and so I went home.
No, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I hadn't talked to him for a while either, and it was pretty sudden. But yeah, he was, he was a spicy guy, but you could, and he pissed a lot of people off, and he wasn't the most perfect guy. But and like you said, he was a young guy, and I wrote something on my Facebook. People say that it's not personal, it's just business, and he used to say, no, it's my business, it's personal.
Right.
And he took it that way, and it's true. He would, and if you worked for him and he liked me, he'd defend you to the death. But don't F with him, man.
Yeah, the Portuguese. He definitely meant what he said, and stood by everything 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, he was something else. So what are you, man? You've done a lot with this magazine, man, publishing all the years. Like, what are you most proud of? Like, what do you think was kind of the thing you stood behind that really made you successful? This stuff.
I think it's truly a team effort, and it always was. So it's not like the 80s, I started by myself, and it was always a team effort. So I think of Jim Wilkes, Greg Shoemaker, Brett Bain. It's really, truly been a team effort. From there was a time, one year we did, I think it was 110 boats.
Oh my
which
gosh.
is a lot. Now
Wow.
we do 14 to 16. Um, but to have, we had, I'd say 35, 40 guys, team members,
Wow.
and now we have about six. But I think that the team is what I'm most proud of. And, could be from from picking out the jerseys that Ray, has taken over, and um, to, whatever. I mean, for me, the actual physical magazine, um, I don't even look at some months, many months. My dad will call me and say, "Oh God, you got to see this Beesmeyer that's on." And for me, it's been 40 years, so there's not much that I have not seen in 40 years. Um, so I still listen to everybody, and because it was in the magazine, and they're proud of it, and therefore I should be proud of it. And so, but it's been a great ride for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely has been. And it's, I look at it every month, and, I feel the same sometimes. I don't know, it's just another poker run, but you look, and if you spend a couple minutes, like it's gorgeous stuff. And the book looks great.
Thanks.
You haven't cut on expenses to make it a good quality piece. And, and I know how publishing companies can do that, and you guys haven't. So that's cool. Very cool.
Yeah, thanks. Everybody puts in, Ray and Brett are at it, into the evenings, on deadline, trying to get everything, done. And it's, I'd say it's gotten easier, but it's still a difficult, when you're on deadline, it's still difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I know Brett is always waiting till 12:01 to get my stuff. So I apologize.
That's all right.
But he always gets it. So,
Yep.
but yeah, anyhow, so great. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time. Anything we missed that we didn't talk about?
You definitely covered Elvis. You covered Hot Boat. No, the team, Brett and Ray are still. Kelly is the art director. She's been with me or us 15 or 20 years.
Mhm.
There's not I don't know when one of us goes next who will be there to um, replace us, because I'm not really sure there is replacements, and it's tough to you know match it when a guy's been there 10 years or 30 years. I mean, you found them when you found them, and they stayed and enjoyed the job, and so yeah, Ray's been a great partner, and Brett has been a great editor. I really truly couldn't do it without either of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty amazing what they do. It's kind of a machine over there, but like you said, with guys like Tommy Lee and Carter, nice young guys. So I'm sure that brings some youthful energy to things. So
No
and
question. I mean, they're both located in Lake Havasu, um, and Ray takes them, like I said. So they got December off. I think January off, but they were in Miami, for whatever, 4, 5, 6 days, and their Desert Storm is next week, and that'll
mm-hmm.
kick things off, and there'll be another summer that we've covered, hopefully, and gone to 25 or 30, poker runs, boat shows, and races.
Yeah, insane. No, it's good stuff. And like you started the multimedia. I mean, you guys are on all the great job on the social media, speedboat.com and Speedboat Magazine, I believe, on some of the social medias, but
Yep.
the videos are great. There's a lot of good multimedia stuff. So they've carried on your ideas there.
Yeah, I mean, so Ray is 98% of all the multimedia, Facebook and Instagram and all of that. But I think the key is that most of the time, they really enjoy what they do, and that really does make the difference between whether you're hitting home runs or you're hitting strikeouts or singles.
Mm-hmm. And that's something I never even thought about either, that Ray has done that probably was the foundation, was your success, was you knew everybody. You were at every event, you got to know everybody, you got to know them personally, which helped you get their business. And sure. Ray's the same way, man. Anybody if I need a contact for anything, Ray knows everybody and right. Intimately, so that's a great way of building those relationships to keep things going. So
thanks. Yeah, we definitely try. And I would say the most, it's probably not, but the most impressed I was Ray was working a client that's in Lake Havasu, and he said, okay, get up on the bar and sing an Elvis tune, and you've got it. And Ray, without hesitation, jumped up on stage like he was Elvis himself and knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that part. I heard he's quite the Elvis impersonator.
Well, so that's how Ray and I originally hooked up, was through Jeff Kmeyer at Levy, which is now, I think he's at Eliminator. But yeah. So he wanted something for Ray, and so I said okay. And then I met Ray at the LA Boat Show, and that was the beginning of Speedboat.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, yep. So speedboat.com. So let's everybody support the only and the best true performance magazine that there's still in print, and it's worth your, I don't know what the price is these days, but whatever they charge, it's worth it. It's a great magazine. So go on there, subscribe.
It's only $4.99. Although I just got my distributors trying to get me to go to $14.99. So it may not be $4.99 next week, but I know it won't be $14.99.
Oh, good man! It should not be $14.99. It should be like 20, at least 25. Come on, for 9 issues of a coffee table like book. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. What a deal! So
thanks a lot.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks again, man, and thanks for all these years of taking my calls and when I needed to talk to you or whatever. But it's cool. Thanks for coming on and talking. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for listening to Powerboat Talk. If you like what you've heard, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. For more Powerboat Talk, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website at powerboattalk.com.